Something massive is brewing behind the scenes of one of hip-hop's biggest superstars, and it might change everything we thought we knew about Drake. For years, rumors have circulated about ghostwriters feeding him verses and hooks, yet those whispers always seemed to blow over whenever his next hit dropped. Now, with new leaks claiming to expose some of his most personal and lyrical songs as products of someone else's pen, that conversation is heating up all over again. And this time, it's not going away quietly. Much more than just a recycled rumor, these fresh revelations are arriving at a particularly delicate moment. Drake stands in the midst of messy label disputes and behind-the-scenes drama, which might explain why these secrets are surfacing now. If these allegations hold any truth, we could be on the brink of the biggest credibility crisis he's ever faced. Today, we're diving deep into the timeline, the evidence, and the stakes. From the hush-hush reference tracks that have supposedly leaked to the mysterious insider dropping cryptic messages, there's a lot to untangle, so buckle up and let's get into it. Ever since Drake ascended to the top of the rap game, whispers about ghostwriters have swirled around him. At first, these rumors mostly revolved around melodic hooks, or collaborative input from artists like Party Next Door, The Weeknd, and even Lil Yachty. The biggest bombshell early on came when Quentin Miller was credited, or blamed, depending on your viewpoint, for tracks off "If You're Reading This, It's Too Late." Back then, fans went to war over how serious these accusations really were. Did it matter if Drake got some help on a few lines? Was it just standard industry collaboration? Or was it proof that he lacked authenticity? Most controversies eventually fade, but this one never fully disappeared. The talk of so-and-so wrote that bar, or Drake borrowed that flow, has followed him album after album, from Views to Certified Lover Boy. As time passed, though, a pattern emerged. The truly scathing claims always seemed to drop right before Drake released a project or found himself in a high-stakes conflict. Then, the hype around his new music overshadowed the gossip, and everything went back to normal, for a while. But that wasn't the whole story. What's new this time is the bombshell that some of Drake's most cherished timestamp songs, like 5 a.m. in Toronto or 4 p.m. in Calabasas, may not be entirely his. These songs have always been positioned as his lyrical high ground, the moments where he ditches commercial hooks and speaks candidly about his life, his success, his frustrations. Fans took them as snapshots of Drake's unfiltered thoughts, a direct hotline to his personal reflections. If these tracks were never entirely his own words, it shakes up everything we thought we knew about his artistry. Apparently, a mysterious user has leaked snippets or entire reference tracks recorded by an unknown rapper named Moolah. The rumor goes that this shadowy writer rapped lines, flows, and entire verses that ended up almost verbatim on Drake's final recordings. If real, this is no small matter. It undercuts the emotional core of Drake's discography, challenging the idea that he's a genuine lyricist in moments where authenticity was supposed to be front and center. The severity of these claims has triggered a mixed reaction. Some fans insist the leaks are fake news, manufactured by trolls who want clout. Others point out how these claims fit a decade-long pattern of Drake adopting different styles. They argue that using a ghostwriter for a hype track or radio single is one thing, but for introspective timestamp bars, that's a whole new level of betrayal. With the community so divided, everyone's wondering who's telling the truth, and why these leaks are emerging at this very moment. But that leads us to another question. Who's behind these leaks, and why are they surfacing now? According to posts circulating on social media, the individual leaking the reference tracks isn't Moolah himself, but someone who claims to have obtained files, voice memos, and text messages connected to Drake's camp. To heighten the suspense, this unknown figure keeps dropping cryptic hints about more to come and how people will finally learn the truth. Each message is vague enough to leave fans guessing, yet specific enough to feel like it could be real. Part of the speculation is that this source has an axe to grind against Drake. Maybe they're a disgruntled collaborator, an ex-friend turned foe, or someone who's aligned with Drake's label issues. Others think the label itself might be behind it, quietly nudging certain people to expose Drake's secrets as payback for any negative claims he's made about them. This would be a massive leap from typical industry disputes, but stranger things have happened, and the timing couldn't be more pointed. Drake has been vocal about feeling unsupported or even manipulated by his record label. He's hinted at shady deals, unfair splits, and behind-the-scenes politics. Some believe the label might be letting these secrets leak, or at the very least, not going out of its way to bury them, just to show Drake that they hold serious leverage. After all, if your label has access to all your raw studio sessions and knows who really wrote what, that's a powerful card to play when negotiations turn ugly. But the motives go deeper. For years, fans saw Drake as the label's golden goose, a sure bet for platinum hits and streaming records. In return, the label gave him massive promotional budgets and placed him atop every playlist you could imagine. But as Drake's empire expanded beyond music, into fashion, brand endorsements, and business ventures, rumors started circling that his label wanted a bigger cut of that larger pie. Tension mounted when Drake allegedly hinted that the label was holding him back from certain opportunities or interfering with his creative vision. Disputes over money are common in the music world, yet they rarely spill out in such a public and potentially damaging manner. If the people at the top are seeing Drake as an ungrateful superstar who now threatens to overshadow them or go fully independent, they might be less inclined to protect his image. And Drake's image, especially the belief that he's a talented, introspective writer, is a massive piece of why fans connect with him so strongly. Ghostwriting alone won't necessarily topple a career. Many icons have weathered that storm. But if there's a broader narrative that Drake is both unoriginal in his artistry and disloyal in his business dealings, that combination can chip away at his entire foundation. Picture fans who once resonated with those timestamp raps, the ones who said, "This is Drake at his realest." If that authenticity is compromised, how many will stick around? But that's not all. In the realm of hip-hop, authenticity is king. There's a deep-rooted expectation that rappers write their own bars, especially those claiming to be at the lyrical forefront. It's a genre birthed from street poetry and personal storytelling, where your pen game is both your weapon and your shield. If you're caught faking it, fans and peers alike can turn on you brutally. Drake has sometimes dismissed these purist critiques, focusing instead on making hits that resonate across genres. Still, even mainstream listeners usually expect someone credited as a top-tier MC to pen their own lines, particularly the verses that seem to reflect personal struggle, triumph, or vulnerability. Think back to those lines from 5 a.m. in Toronto or 4 p.m. in Calabasas that people love to quote, believing them to be Drake's raw introspection. If those lines were put together by an uncredited songwriter, it undercuts the emotional bond listeners felt with Drake. Kendrick Lamar, for instance, has publicly drawn a line in the sand regarding ghostwriters. Other artists, from J. Cole to older heads like Royce da 5'9", have also been vocal about the importance of writing your own lyrics. In many ways, Drake benefited from occupying a pop-rap hybrid lane where the emphasis was less on authenticity and more on making chart toppers. But his timestamp tracks have always been the exception, moments where he seemed to step into the ring and box with the best of them. If those two are co-written or ghost-written, it can feel like a betrayal to fans who championed Drake as the total package. So where does that leave us? It's one thing to question Drake's pen on commercial hits like One Dance or God's Plan, but it's entirely different to find out he didn't write the lines that shaped his serious MC reputation. That's the angle that could do lasting damage. A significant part of Drake's brand rests on the idea that he can rap with the best while still delivering melodic pop hooks. He's simultaneously your introspective poet and the life of the party. Strip away that poet component, and he's no longer the unstoppable force that he's been for the past decade. In hip-hop discourse, credibility can crumble fast. If the new leaks gain traction and more material surfaces, like voice recordings, unreleased references, or even videos of ghostwriters rapping Drake's lines, skeptics might become believers overnight. The same fans who rushed to his defense when the Quentin Miller fiasco broke could feel blindsided, and that sense of betrayal is hard to reverse. Even from a business standpoint, sponsors and brand collaborators might question whether the authentic narrative that drew them to Drake is still intact. The same record label he's clashing with could use that loss of credibility as leverage in negotiations, or simply allow him to take the heat alone. And the broader rap community might double down on its critique, pushing him further out of the lyrical rapper conversation. In other words, Drake would remain a star, but the respect that once set him apart could vanish. Yet, there's more looming on the horizon. Each day, new rumors pop up suggesting that what we've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg. The unknown figure behind these leaks keeps teasing additional receipts and hidden aspects of Drake's creative process. Some posts allude to personal stories that might paint Drake in a different light entirely, stuff unrelated to music but possibly damaging to his public persona. Private messages, questionable deals, and undisclosed relationships have all been hinted at without concrete details. Fans and critics alike wonder if this is all a bluff. Sometimes these big claims fizzle out once the person behind them gets attention, but in certain corners of social media, people claim to have already heard advanced snippets of other reference tracks or partial demos that seem to confirm the pattern. The severity of these revelations might depend on just how many of Drake's iconic records can be traced back to ghostwriters. If the majority of his discography is under scrutiny, the fallout could be unlike anything we've witnessed in modern hip-hop. What's fascinating is the psychological warfare unfolding. By leaking bits and pieces gradually, the source keeps Drake's camp in a state of uncertainty. They don't know which day another track might appear on the internet, or which conversation could be broadcast for the world to see. That constant anxiety can push artists and labels to make rash decisions, or slip up in ways that provide even more material for the leaker. But with all the swirling speculation, one thing stands out. Drake now faces a crossroads that will define how he's remembered. One path involves confronting these allegations head-on, maybe admitting that collaborations and uncredited contributions were more extensive than anyone realized. If he chose transparency, he'd risk immediate backlash, but might salvage some long-term credibility. On the other hand, if he goes the road of denial, labeling everything as fake or fabricated, he'd still have to explain the mounting evidence to fans who aren't easily convinced anymore. A shaky defense could accelerate a downward spiral, especially if more proof surfaces. The rap community can be both harsh and forgiving. Some fans won't care if Drake wrote 100% of his bars or 50%, they just want bops. Others feel personally invested in the authenticity of their favorite artists, and they'll be less forgiving if they sense they've been deceived. When you think about Drake's journey, mixtapes like So Far Gone, the vulnerability of Take Care, the braggadocio of the timestamp tracks, you realize how heavily he's leaned on the narrative of being a reflective, boundary-pushing lyricist. If that narrative collapses, it will be a watershed moment. Drake might still thrive in the pop sphere, but his place in hip-hop's pantheon could change drastically. The question is, can he maintain both worlds if one half of that foundation is built on shaky ground? Right now, Drake's entire legacy is walking a tightrope. Fresh reference tracks seemingly confirm what many have speculated for years, yet loyal fans are still waiting for absolute proof. No matter which side you fall on, staunch supporter or skeptical observer, it's impossible to deny the impact these new revelations could have on the landscape of modern rap. The label drama, the cryptic leaker, and the possibility that Drake didn't pen some of his most personal songs all create a storm that might set a precedent for how we view authenticity in the industry. Time will tell if more evidence surfaces or if Drake's team will manage to discredit the accusations. For now, one thing remains clear. The stakes are higher than they've ever been. We're talking about a potential turning point in hip-hop's ongoing conversation about artistry versus commercialism, about genuine self-expression versus brand building. Whether Drake weathers this storm or succumbs to it will shape not just his career, but how we talk about ghostwriting, collaboration, and personal truth in rap going forward. Where do you stand on it all? Do you believe there's real substance behind these reference tracks, or is it just another failed attempt to bring down the top dog? Share your thoughts and keep your eyes peeled for the next revelation, because by the looks of it, this story is far from over.